Hi, and welcome to Feedvisor's 18th Ask the Amazon Experts webinar. I'm Gabby Young, and today I'm joined by two former Amazonians, Brad Moss and Tim Hughes from Product Labs. Over 2,000 of you have registered, so thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you had an incredibly successful holiday season. Now, our experts, Brad and Tim, are here to help you plan for a successful year ahead. We've received hundreds of your questions, and most of the answers should be covered within the next 45 minutes and during the Q&A session at the end. But if you do have any further questions, you can just send them over to us via your GoToWebinar player, and we'll do our best to fit them in. Of course, if you do have any additional questions, you can just email me, gabby.young@feedvisor.com, and shoot me over the questions that you have. So, for those of you who are not yet Feedvisor customers, just to explain what we do, we offer business intelligence solutions for Amazon sellers to help you better understand your business and make smarter pricing, inventory, and product decisions. If you do want a little bit more information about Feedvisor, so I'm just going to launch a little poll here so you can request some more information. And you can either just get more information or see a product demonstration. So that will include our algorithmic repricing solution, which you may have heard of, and the reporting that we provide in the revenue intelligence solutions. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to complete that. And then we can move over to our speakers. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to introduce Brad and Tim. Brad, welcome and thank you for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about your experience at Amazon and what you do at Product Labs.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thanks for having us, Gabby. We're excited to be here and to share some of our experiences at Amazon with people. So myself, I was at Amazon for over 2 years, about 2.5 years. And during my time there, I was responsible for several different businesses. One of them was Seller Central. So I was responsible for kind of coordinating a lot of the teams internally inside of Seller Central, which is the tool that all third-party sellers use to manage and operate their businesses. Now, there's a lot of teams inside of Amazon that contribute to Seller Central, and my job was to help coordinate a lot of that and to help the Seller Central itself become a stronger platform. And then I went on to build the Amazon Seller app, myself and a small team, about 5-6 engineers, and we launched the Amazon Seller app. So if you use that app on your phone, that came through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears from my side, but a lot of talented people there. But that's what I did while at Amazon, and then I left after some really good successes there, and we decided to start Product Labs, myself and Tim. So basically, at Product Labs, we help consulting services. We help run essentially the full Amazon channel for our clients. And then we have some software that also some of our clients use just some of the software, and then other ones, use our full services. I'm one of the founding partners with Tim at Product Labs.
Cool, thanks. And I know that app has come very handy for me. I use it all the time.
Great.
So it was worth it, even if it's only for me.
Good to hear.
And Tim, we would love to hear a little bit about you too.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us again, Gabby. We're glad to be here. So just like Brad, I was at Amazon for about 2.5, 3 years. While I was there, I was responsible for over $250 million worth of programs, which, believe it or not, was actually small by Amazon standards. So the focal areas that I ran were twofold. So one is fulfillment and returns. So we did a lot of things where fulfillment and returns literally touches every aspect of selling, even you don't realize it. A lot of international exposure on that particular team. And then the second one was on monetization, or as everybody knows, the ad space.
Great. So before we move on to the presentation, I want to give people the opportunity to request some information about Product Labs, because you mentioned a little bit about what you do, and I'm sure lots of our audience do want to hear a little bit more. So Product Labs offers consulting services and software solutions. So if you would like some more information, click on the second or third tab on your screen now. And if you once again want some more information about Feedvisor, click on the first one or the last one, where you can get information from both companies. I'll give you a second to do that. Great. So without further ado, I'm handing over the mic to you guys, and let's hear all your knowledge about what you can do to help us plan for a really successful 2018.
Okay, great. All right, so we wanted to lay out several things that we used inside of Amazon, kind of the ways that we would set up and structure a business inside of Amazon. So as you heard, Tim was running several $100 million worth of programs. I had a similar experience, but it started off, sometimes it started off at zero. So we had to set out goals and develop the plan there, and then execute on that plan. So what we want to go through are two different things. The first thing is we want to talk about setting out your plans and goals, and basically the way we did it at Amazon. So if that's useful, hopefully that's useful for you. Or you can just take little bits and pieces of it that are useful for you. And then the second part of the presentation, we want to talk about kind of the future, what we're seeing out there, some of the new things Amazon's doing, some of the new kind of tools sellers have, some of what's going on through the retail industry and things like that. So, and we'll go for as long as we have time. We probably have more content than we have time, but it'll work out. We'll do what we can. All right, so is my screen visible? Is this
Yes, it is.
working great? Okay, good. So actually, let me set up one more thing. All right, now I can see. Okay, so when setting up any business plan that we set up, we basically have three major steps that we can break it down to. Is step one, we set out our major goals. Step number two, we set out what our KPIs or key performance indicators for those major goals. And then step number three, we have to set up the project plan and execute on that. So let's jump right into the goals, kind of the goals area. So we at Amazon, and since we believe in the idea of SMART goals, and we would use SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. It's a kind of a great acronym you can always remember. Essentially, the keys here are making sure that you're not saying, hey, we want to grow by a lot. You want to say we want to grow by X% or to X number of dollars in this amount of time, and be really specific with each goal that you set. Now, you may have a dozen goals, you may have 5 dozen goals. Each one should be set in this exact format. And many times at Amazon, we'd have programs, lists, and pages of loads of goals, and they all had to be set exactly right. Because, and when you set them this way, you kind of know when you achieve and when you don't achieve, and how you need to adjust along the way. And it just helps with clarity. So then kind of the next part, that first is more of a precursor. Now the next part is we go through these 4 basic steps of, one, identify where's your current state, what your current size is. Many times people don't quite know the size of their business, or they may not know how many sales are coming from product A versus product B inside Amazon. So go through and get really detailed and find your current size of where you currently are. So if you're saying, hey, I want to grow from $1 million to $2 million, you definitely need to know how much is coming from each of your products inside Amazon. Then number 3, as you're talking about growing, you got to make sure there's a market for your growth and that there's market opportunity for that growth. So we've had people come to us and say, hey, here's a widget. I want to sell $1 million. And, Sometimes that's not realistic when you start looking at the market size and opportunity. Amazon is not, the sky is not, the full limit on Amazon. There's definitely a market size inside Amazon. There's market size in terms of e-com, and there's market size with retail. And you got to know with your particular product in its niche, you want to understand your market size and what the opportunity is, and how much market share you're taking over, or if it's a brand new market, it's harder to estimate that, but you want to look at similar markets around you to try and identify that market size. So you know that your goal is realistic and your expectations are properly set. Instead of saying I want to sell $1 million, you might actually realize that you can only sell realistically $300,000 for this one particular product.
Right. It's a good thing to maybe go out and look at some of your competition and see what the best person is doing. And if the best person is doing $200,000, for you to set a goal for $1 million might be unrealistic.
Yes. And even if the best person is doing $200,000, setting your goal to $200,000, you got to realize that you're doing the exact same as the best person out there. So you have to be willing to pull out all the stops and to do what you need to do to get there, which may be a lot more advertising because now you're competing against them who already have market share. So that's where we come into make sure your goals are realistic. But you also want to set a realistic growth rate. So to say, hey, I want to go from 0 to $1 million in 1 month depends on totally the market, and but for majority of products, it would be unrealistic to go from 0 to $1 million in 1 month. So you want to plan out your growth rate and how long it's going to be taking, how long you expect it to take you to get from point A to point B. And then number 5, one of the most interesting things at Amazon is we would take several weeks and work on these products and these plans, not products, the plans for our businesses, sometimes months, and we bring it to our vice president, say, hey, here's our plan for the year. He'd say, okay, that's great. Tim might bring a plan to somebody and say, hey, look, I'm going to make $2 million this year for this business. And the vice president will come back and say, oh, that's nice. Let's make it 3 million. And just like that, right? Even though we have all the numbers and analytics behind us.
They call it stretchy, or a stretch goal, or make it stretchy is what Peter used to say a lot.
Yeah.
Let's make it really aggressive.
Let's make this a little more stretchy. So, right. I mean, that's, he would do that frequently, but the idea is to make sure, part of the idea is to make sure that the goal excites you of where you end up, of after you're realistic with your goals, where you're going to be. Does that excite you? And if it does, perfect. If it doesn't, there might be other things you need to add to the equation to not just changing your numbers, but adding other components to your business to actually hit the goals that are going to make it excited for you, or make you guys excited about it.
Brad, there was a question that I just want to address real quick, just on the topic. Somebody said, how do I measure market size or market opportunity with a particular product or area? Amazon doesn't release that information. That's a great question. There's no way to do it exactly, but there are some tools out there. So I encourage you to look around for some third-party tools that might give you an indication of how many sales a competitor might be having.
Yeah, we use some of our own tools, but I know there's things like Jungle Scout and Scope and other tools like that where people use a lot of to identify the sales of another product. We encourage you to come up with some methods that you would use to try and identify a general market size with some of those tools.
A lot of them might be estimates, but as long as you stay,
they all are estimates.
I mean your own methodologies. You're right. All of them are going to be estimates. As long as you stay consistent, I think that'll help you out a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so jumping back, so we basically came up with some quick examples here, and we don't need to spend too much time on this unless there's a lot of questions here. But this is how we would run through a quick product exercise. Is say you're selling paper straws and you sell about 1,000 a month. And according to the numbers, basically you have 1,000 page views. You have every month you have 5% conversion rate, and you're selling $10 per unit. You look around and you see some of the other products. You estimate some of these these tools out there are estimating between $20,000 and $50,000 a month for paper straws. I have no idea if that's true or not, by the way. um, but you see, some of the top products are between 20 and 50,000. So then we start doing the math. First, let's get your conversion rate up from 5%. That's when your key metric, your three key metrics here that we're looking at are the page views, conversion rates, and the price per unit. Those three things multiplied together equals your unit sales, or your sales numbers. So the first thing we're going to do is take your conversion rate, see if we can bump that up and make that a goal, bumping it from 5% to 8%. Then you want to come down and make your price more competitive with your competitors, which is around $8 per unit. So with an 8% conversion rate, if you want to get to 20,000 in sales at $8 per unit, that's going to estimate that you need to get to around 15,000 page views per month for the product. Now, that's one of your next goal. So you now have three goals. You have your page view goals, your conversion rate goal, and your cost per unit goal. And then number three, how long is this going to take for you to do this? You set a goal of saying, look, we think we can make this traffic increase in 3 months' time. Number two, we think we can get the conversion rate up from 5 to 8% in 1 month's time. And then you set that goal. And then or C, the last one is, let's make the price change, which you can do immediately, but we set the goal for 1 week in this scenario.
I think also it's important to note that there's different levels of goals, things that we call like input goals to your ultimate goal. Your ultimate goal might be to drive your sales, but in order to get there, you might identify, as Brad said, that you need to get to a certain level of page views. So the page views might be an input to your ultimate goal. So just remember, you might have multiple levels, but we used to call them different goal types. They were S-team goals, which were the senior leadership team goals, and then they went down from there. So just remember that you might have different things that feed into your highest level goals, and that's okay. I mean, you might find it benefits you to structure things that way.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a really good point you bring up, Tim. Is we would have, you'd have your bigger goal of, say, hey, we want to grow to this market to $1 billion, but then you have a load of maybe 20 supporting goals to get to that $1 billion. Then each of those 20 supporting goals might have 3 or 4 additional goals to reach each one of those 20 goals. So it's almost a tiered structure. And that way you can see which goal is attributing to the larger goal for the company or for the business unit.
Remember that these things, it might sound silly, but you can use this information to go back and assess your performance. So let's say you set a goal of so much for sales, and then maybe you don't hit that goal, or maybe you blow through that goal. You can go back and look at your supporting goals, the other things that you did that worked or didn't work to help you plan for the next year. Obviously, if you do the same thing over and over again, it didn't work for you the first time, it's probably not going to work for you the second time.
Yeah. Okay. Great point. So then number 4, kind of moving through, you do want to check, does this goal excite you, right? The market size opportunity is only $20,000 per month for this one product. But you want for this business line or these products to get to 50,000 a month. Well, let's not just change the market size number up. You need to do more things. So say you need to add 3 more items to hit that goal. And then to add 3 more items, and you make more goals around that, it's going to take you 3 months to source, 3 total items. So you need 2 additional products. So maybe bundles or different kinds of straws. Some like a plastic straw, maybe paper isn't. I don't know. Whatever other supporting items you have. So it might take you 3 months to source those products, to source those 2 new products, and so now you put that in your full timeline. It might take you 6 months total to reach this goal of 50,000 a month, which is actually exciting to you, versus the 20,000 a month where you were before. So that's one brief example running through how we might run through goals and setting some goals for a product or a business. So number 2 on this point is the KPIs, and talking about the KPIs. And to what Tim was talking about a little bit, he brought up the inputs and outputs. We're going to jump into a slide next that talks about those in more detail. But you want to be able to understand, and this is where a lot of the detail comes in inside Amazon, is you want to understand what you have control over. So there's many things you have zero control over and other things you do have control over. And you want to isolate the things you have full control over that you can go in there, change and influence. That's going to affect your goals. And you want to track how that's affecting your goals over the time period. So you want to, number one, isolate your control points and understand what those are. Number two, you want to have these metrics and track these metrics. So as we mentioned, page views is a big metric we track. Conversion rate's a big metric we track, and price is another big metric we track, because those three equals your sales. Another one you may want to track, there's loads of metrics to track, but just another example is inventory levels, or as an organization, you may want to track your customer satisfaction and feedback. And then kind of the third point here on the KPIs is the actions and the people that you want to be tracking. That's going to help you achieve this goal, because you do need resources to hit any goal. Kind of the worst thing at Amazon to happen to somebody would be to say, hey, here's this goal. You got to grow this business by $50 million and you have zero resources to do it. And that happens.
You have to get creative. It gets very, yeah. It was not uncommon. I remember going in some places where they said, okay, you have to launch software for this particular space. Yet you had no team of developers to do it. So you had to get creative and figure out how to do it. But that was...
Yeah. That's Amazon. I mean, that's the really lean Amazon. So hopefully you're able to have some resources to be able to accomplish what you're trying to do with your products. But you do want to be able to track that. You want to have the action, the people that you need, and tracking that of the completion dates and the hiring dates and when those are all going to kick in. Kind of jumping into the key metrics is we've gone through and we broke down the Amazon selling machine and how we would look at it from an Amazon perspective. And what you have here are, a few math equations. Profit equals revenue minus costs. Revenue, as we mentioned, are sessions times conversion rate times your price. And then your costs are essentially your units times your selling costs, which kind of break down from there. So to understand this chart a little bit, the orange boxes are output metrics. So you cannot go in and change that number or change anything about that right now. But all the yellow boxes are things that you have direct control over. So you can go change. You can change your price at any given point. You could change the media you have up on the listing. You could change the content inside your detail page. You could change, or you can respond to questions someone may have. You can ask people for reviews. So all of those things. So if we start on the left, kind of I'll touch on a few of these highlight the important things here. The first things that we're looking at are conversion rate, and the four big inputs to conversion rate are your listing, the media that's there, the images or video content. The second thing is the pros, the text you have up on the detail page that's selling your product. And the next thing is the listing value, which essentially is your price and your promotions, or kind of the value of your product versus the competitors. So it could be just changing your price down $1, and that's going to affect your conversion rate. So when you think, many times people come to us to say, hey, when should I put my price up or down? And we say, well, what's your conversion rate? And they say, well, why does that matter? We say, well, price is a direct input into your conversion rate. So if you have a really good conversion rate, you can try adjusting your prices up and see if the conversion rate holds. If your conversion rate's really low, price may be your problem, right? If you're selling for $20, the exact same product someone else is selling for $10, and you have the exact same kind of media content and customer feedback, but your conversion rate's low, it could all be just because your price is higher than theirs. And so someone's going in, looking at yours, looking at theirs, and then they're bouncing from your page. So price is an input into your conversion rate. And then the four big points on the conversion rate is your customer feedback. So that's the reviews that everyone talks about, the star ratings, and that's, you got to take that into consideration as well. Is, hey, how much should I be focusing on my stars, my reviews? Well, it's an input into your conversion rate. So check out your conversion rate, see how well it's doing, and then focus on that aspect if that's the weakest part, and your conversion rate's low. So that's the conversion rate side. Then the next is the page view side, which that's all the traffic coming in. And Amazon reports it as sessions and page views. They're slightly different, but they're really similar metrics. But you have your what we call your organic page views. So that's when someone types in straw, your paper straw comes up and someone clicks on it. So you didn't pay anything for that. You just came up in the listing and someone clicks on it. So those are input. The inputs you have there are what your title is, your content keywords, your back end, how well your back end keywords are matching to keywords that people are looking for, and then your listing categorization is so like what category you're in and how you're listed on Amazon. Then on the right side, the influence side is what all the marketing is. So that's any advertising you do. There's page views that come from all your ads that you're putting up on Amazon, or any particular promotions you have, or offsite advertising, which may be social media, Facebook, Google, or Instagram, some other offsite advertising that you dump into Amazon. That also adds page views to your product. And then other offsite traffic, which could be blogs or things like that. So those are all things that you have direct input into. And then the orange components are kind of the output metrics, but those are the ones that we're tracking, right? That's we're watching, hey, if I need to get 15,000 page views in a month, what do I need to do to adjust my organic and influenced traffic to grow that and make that higher? Tim, do you want to mention anything on the cost side? I know we could probably spend the whole hour about just this slide.
Yeah, it's not as complicated on the cost side, but just remember to always check the things that you can control. If you're using FBA or even using your own fulfillment, you want to make sure that you're reducing the cost to fulfill. The things that go into that are the physical dimensions of your product. So remember, you're selling online, you're not selling in a retail store. Therefore, a lot of the times you don't need retail packaging, and remember that. There's a whole reason why Amazon came out with what they call the frustration-free packaging. It wasn't anything to do with frustration-free. It was to do with reducing the cost of packaging itself and then fulfilling the item. So remember that when you if you have a private label product or if you're reselling, these are things that you can control. Maybe you don't need the big fancy package, so you can cut back on that. Maybe you don't need to lay out, in a retail box. You do that through your pictures. The other things to monitor are making sure that Amazon is charging you correctly based on your dimensions of your product. We don't think that Amazon makes mistakes, or maybe we've been selling for a while and we understand Amazon does make mistakes like everybody else. So make sure that you are periodically checking things like you're being properly reimbursed, or your shipments are not lost, and if they are, you're being reimbursed for those items. Or if items are being returned, are you getting the proper credits to those items? Are you making sure that you're not getting charged for erroneous fees that you shouldn't be? We personally had things happen where items were miscategorized and we got charged extra, and so open up those tickets and make sure you stay on them to get your money back.
Yeah. All right, we'll keep moving because we're blazing through time. But I did want to answer two questions quickly. A few people have asked, what's a good conversion rate? We use 10% as a good rule of thumb inside Amazon. Outside of Amazon, the average e-com conversion rate's around 3%. Inside of Amazon, it's we always aim for at least 10% as kind of getting up to the good bar for your product. And then someone asked, is it the unit session percentage? That is, yeah, you can use that as your conversion rate number. And we could explain later or offline how to find that number inside the business reports. So again, I'll move a little quickly through this, but some of the key metrics that we're tracking, or people look at: sales, unit sales, average price point, page views. Again, we look at organic and then paid or influenced. Then your conversion rate, FBA fees, and advertising spend. This is a metrics deck that we use for our clients. That we have systems that kind of feed this deck and this is one of several pages, but this is kind of the viewpoint that we look at businesses through. Now let's see. The last point is execution. So again, look at the calendar, timing of major events. Actually, I'll run to that in a second. 2, detail out your control mechanisms. 3, list the resources you need to achieve what you need to achieve, as we're talking about people, personnel. 4, deadlines, and then 5, plan Bs, which are inevitably going to happen. So here's a few examples of big events: Prime Day, Black Friday, December promotions, maybe Mother's Day. Your control inputs: price, page views, conversion rates. Resources: your customer service. Maybe you need a PPC specialist or a finance bookkeeper, photographer, or an analyst to just start dissecting half the numbers for you that you're looking at. Deadlines: set your deadlines with your goals: Q1, Q2, Q3. Perhaps those are your deadlines, or specific months in the year. But if, for example, if you want to get to 50,000 in sales for this one product in 6 months, you want to set, a sales number of where are you in month 3, where are you in month 5, and then where are you in month 6, for example. So you want to understand those deadlines. And if you haven't hit that deadline, so in month 3, say you want to get to 20,000 and you're only at 15,000 in month 3, you are now behind your goal, your plan. So you need to do something else to make up for the rest of it. So we had this concept inside Amazon of, is a goal red, green, or blue? No,
Yellow.
That's way up. Red, green, or yellow.
Yeah, red, yellow, green.
Red, yellow, green. And if you were green, you're on track. If you're yellow, it means you were still on track, but there were some threats to throwing you off of your plan. And then if you are red, that means you are not going to hit it. You either need to change the number of resources that you're using, you need to change what the final goal is, or you need to change the date in which you're going to hit the final goal. So whenever something was red, we had to have a serious conversation amongst the business teams, because many times your goals were influencing other people's goals because you only have so many resources inside a business. And so we would use those 3 mechanisms to identify which goals were missing and hitting when you were there. And then that comes to kind of the step 5. I don't think I've ever been a part of a business where all the goals just went the way we planned it. That would be nice. But you always got to have plan Bs. So in the example earlier, the plan B was to add more product lines. Or say that you're shipping by sea and something happened, there's delays in the factory, and you now need to ship it by air if you're actually going to hit your goals in the timeline that you want to hit. So that's obviously going to hit your bottom line costs. But if your primary goal is the top line instead of the bottom line, then maybe you do that action and you ship it by air to get it there. You need to get more traffic. Maybe you want to do a Facebook co-op or some other way of advertising that you didn't think about. Maybe your neighbor down the street has a group of people to advertise your product to, or whatnot. So what are you going to say?
Just want to say one thing. It might go without saying, but once you set these goals, it's not over. You definitely want to track these goals as you go. Every week at Amazon, we had what was called a WBR, a weekly business review, and we were responsible for tracking our goals, our progress to the goal. And if you're not at your goal, or you're not trending towards where you should be, which, like Brad said, happens all the time, you need to have what's called a path to green, or a path to get back on track for your goal. So remember that, if you set a goal for 6 months from now, and then 6 months you show up and you're like, man, I didn't meet my goal. My first question was, well, when did you identify you'd be off track? And then my second question would be, what did you do to try to get back on track, right? So it's very important for you to follow the progress of these goals over time and make adjustments. As Brad said, nothing is perfect. Nothing is going to go as planned. So you need to have a plan B. You need to find out what you're doing. If it's not working, then switch and try something else.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. We got about 10 more minutes of talking before we jump to some Q&A. So now we're moving on to the second section, which is a lot of the theorizing about what's going on, but we want to talk about some of the definite things that are happening. So the second section, what's kind of new for 2018? Let's talk about the new seller tools. There's a lot more brand controls out there, and I don't see that slowing down at all. Essentially, that's Amazon's solution. The way we've seen it, that's Amazon's solution to a lot of the counterfeiting that's going on, is this brand controls. So if you don't have your trademarks around your products, get those going. Make sure you get the brand controls, because you're getting a lot more content and a lot more things that you can actually do once you have that brand control. Number 2 are coupons. These are pretty new, but we've actually seen some really good success with them for the few clients who've really wanted to push these, and they can be more successful using a coupon than just doing a normal promotion. Buy one get one free, or buy one get one 10% off. Coupons have been available for vendors, the people on the vendor side, for years, but now they've just opened up to the 3P seller side. So definitely check those out.
They are
No,
essentially the same thing as some of the promos, but I think
yeah,
people
it
maybe
is.
are more comfortable with coupons, or I think they do have a little bit more visual prominence on some pages, so maybe people are more used to using them as opposed to promotions.
Yeah. Um, so then videos, there's a lot of teams inside Amazon that are really pushing the video stuff. Video content is more dynamic. It's more interesting for consumers. There are some things that have been coming where third-party sellers can add a video into the main block of images, but it's usually more rare, and you can't do it with all of your products. But as a third-party seller, you can get products into the related video shorts section, which is right above the customer questions and feedback inside the detail page. So there's a service, we advise. There's several services out there. One of the most prominent is this AMZ product video service that helps you get any videos you have into that slot of the related video shorts to help sell your product, or do a review about your product, or do customer feedback about the product. Then also fairly new are the headline ads that Amazon's added into the third-party seller side, and you do need brand control and to have your brand registered to get access to those headline ads. And do note the few adjustments. The headline ads are not on every single page inside of Amazon and every single keyword. Sometimes they pull them off and they just do sponsored product ads. Then there has been also a change to the sponsored product ads where you won't see them on the right side anymore. Amazon announced that they're pulling those off of the right side, and so sponsored product ads are just going to be in line either at the very top of the page or in line inside the search results page or at the very bottom. And then lastly, there's hazmat exceptions that have been coming out. So it's kind of this newer hazmat program where they're exploring, and they're allowing some sellers to sell hazmat products, and you need to get into kind of this beta hazmat program. And I know one of the questions is going to be, well, how do I get into it? We don't have any silver bullet there. It's you're going to have to contact Amazon and see if you can get into the program yourself, or just get on the waiting list to get into the program. But that's another new thing that we've seen that's been coming out lately.
One thing to note on the whole hazmat thing, a lot of people think that Amazon hates you or something like that when you get a hazmat notice or your items deemed as hazmat. Just understand that certain fulfillment centers are not they're not licensed or certified to deal with certain hazmat items. That could be something as simple as a lithium-ion battery. So they're not by law able to handle certain items. And so they don't dislike you. They're not trying to be mean to you. It's just that their fulfillment centers aren't equipped to handle those items.
Yeah. All right. So there's a few Amazon behaviors that have been that we've been noticing lately. So let's see, FBA updates. Tim, what are some of the latest FBA updates that are coming?
Okay, so people who have been on Amazon for maybe less than a year or maybe slightly over a year might have got a notice in Seller Central saying that FBA rates are going up on the 22nd of next month. Don't freak out. This happens every single year. Again, I was in the fulfillment space, so I know way too much about this stuff. So every year in about January, you see all the fulfillment carriers, they're going to raise prices based on the costs from the previous year. As a result, Amazon is also going to raise their price. So you'll see FBA prices go up. So two things happened this year. One is that prices have gone up slightly. That's to be expected. That's just to cover the cost. If you look at Amazon's, some of their 10K statements, you'll see that their fulfillment costs are in the billions of dollars. They spend a ton of money to fulfill stuff, especially that Prime stuff that goes 2 days. So you're going to see some rates go up, not all rates, but some. You'll see most of the rates that pertain to everybody are going to go up. Some of the larger rates maybe didn't change that much. The other big change that you guys will see is that they are no longer doing this split where in the first 3 quarters of the year, there's one FBA rate, and then in fourth quarter, there's a separate FBA rate. So we were all kind of used to, hey, FBA rates go up during January through September, they go down October through December, and then the opposite for the storage fees. They've gotten rid of that. There's a flat rate throughout the entire year, which is good. So you don't have to understand or try to figure out, hey, am I going to be charged more or less right now?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, few other components here of Amazon's behavior. Let's move on. I don't know how, we've got a few questions, and coming into this is, should I sell through a vendor account or a seller account, or should I do a hybrid between the two? We've seen a lot of businesses moving to more of the hybrid model, where they traditionally sold through the vendor account. Now they're moving to 3P seller. Sometimes you're a 3P seller and you get all the vendor express emails of like, hey, sell through vendor, the vendor side. So we wanted to talk through a little bit about the differences, and I'll be fairly quick on this. The first one is that you're Prime eligible if you're selling as a vendor inside Amazon. The idea was that or the metric showed you got about a 50% sales bump once your products became Prime eligible. Through third-party account, you can also make it Prime eligible by selling through FBA, as many people already know, or the Seller Fulfilled Prime program. Second point, payment terms. On the vendor side, it's usually cash up front. On the seller side, it's cash after someone makes a purchase. Number three, Amazon handles all the customer service on the vendor side, but on the 3P side, you handle customer service that's not related to shipping issues, and which means you can also customize your customer service a little bit more closely. So you can provide a better customer experience than someone might get if they sold through Amazon, and we've seen that actually improve people's feedback on their products when you're able to do that. So we consider that a strategic advantage of being a 3P seller. For all the analytics we've been talking about, you get really basic analytics sales information from the vendor side. From the seller side, you get much deeper in terms of the page views, the conversion rates. You get return reason codes. There's a whole list of loads of analytics that you get on the seller side. That said, if you were a vendor and you had ARA Premium, which is fairly expensive to get, you get a lot of great data. So that's the one caveat there. The fifth point, the Amazon sets your pricing for you when you're selling through vendor. So if you want to control your pricing across multiple channels, even if you set MAP, it doesn't always hold. With Amazon, they cut down people's MAPs all the time and go below it. If you're selling 3P, you're controlling your price at every single given point, and that's one of the best things that Feedvisor does, is understand your pricing, whether you're selling on the same product or not, or you're selling your own products, or you're selling trying to win the buy box. The number six, you get to customize your own promotions inside the 3P side. If you're not, an interesting thing we've noticed on the Amazon side is sometimes Amazon runs your products down for a promotion. They sell them for a much cheaper price, and even almost at break even of where they bought them from you for. And if you're not worried about your pricing, that can be an advantage if you just want to move volume and get a higher margin for your product. We've seen that happen, but you have zero control over when it happens or why that happens. But we've seen that happen where Amazon pulls their pricing down, they lose money on your product essentially, but you still make your margin, and it moves the volume. But again, to the consumer, the price is lower than maybe where you want it. Number seven, when you're advertising through the vendor side, the AMS system, your ads are sent in a general format. When you set up an ad, if someone else is selling your product or your brand, or reselling it that you've distributed to or whatnot, you set up an ad, they click on the ad, and they go to the detail page. It doesn't matter who wins the buy box. Someone may buy the product, and you may not get direct attribution for that brand marketing. Versus the seller side, if you put an ad up and someone clicks on your ad, they're going directly to the detail page that you've won the buy box for, and you get direct attribution if someone buys the product through your ad. Versus if they're doing the same thing on the vendor side. And you can imagine this is set up for someone like a P&G who just has a large marketing budget, and they say, okay, this brand, we're going to throw all these ads in and just do general advertising. It's not tied directly to product sales, which on the third-party side, it is tied directly to sales. Then the eighth point is margins can vary on Amazon side. They get a set what they want to buy your product from you for, and that can go up and down throughout the year and even week to week. On the seller side, margins are set 15% in general, and but as Tim mentioned, sometimes FBA fees go up, which can also change on the vendor side as well. So that's a quick breakdown of the two there, and we're running short on time, but I do want to mention the Amazon's brands. Have Tim run or a couple more things. So Tim, want to run into the brands here? What we're
Yeah, so
seeing
a lot
with
of
Amazon
people,
selling
we've been
3P.
seeing a lot of stuff in the news lately about Amazon is doing this. They're trying to get into this or trying to get into that. In reality, we found that Amazon is already very much in a lot of stuff. So we've been doing some research, and we found that currently we know of more than 35 private label brands that Amazon owns. Some of them you're very aware of, like they sell things under the Amazon brand, so it's very hard to not know that one. Another common one is the Amazon Basics brand. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about this. There's actually a ton more out there, and I'm sure that there's a lot that we haven't even discovered. So just remember that, keep an eye on that to know that, hey, you might be getting into a space where Amazon dominates with one of their own private label brands. Maybe that would persuade you not to go into that space or take a different direction. Now, what we found is some of the most prominent categories, like they're all over the place, but the categories that we've seen that are most prominent are there's a lot of clothing brands. They're in a lot of private label clothing brands. You guys may have heard of, I think one's called May, Lark and Row, Scout and Row. They like to do, who was it? One of these tech blogs wrote an article about how Amazon's brands were all poorly named because they're all something ampersand another name, like Lark and Row and Scout and Row and something and Row. But you'll see a lot of those. I mentioned before in electronics, you pretty much know all the major brands in electronics, things under the Amazon only brand, things like the Echoes, the Kindles. We've seen a lot of stuff under mostly under those two categories, but then there's a lot of other things. So baby clothes, jewelry, food and beverages, actually like tools and hardware and things of that nature. They might not have produced these things on their own. They might have purchased a private label product, or they're working with some private label brand. But we have seen more and more growth in these areas, and I would expect to see a lot more this year too as time goes on.
Yeah. All right. Kind of the last point here is that Amazon's opening two new marketplaces, Australia and Brazil. Did want to give some context to this. Canada, if you have accounts and products in Canada, you should probably consider that similar to what's going to happen in Australia and Brazil in terms of what your sales expectations should be. Looking at the number of people, Australia is smaller. But they spend a lot. They do have it. Basically, their GDP is 1.2 trillion in Australia. Canada's 1.3, and Brazil's 1.8. So we'd estimate as Amazon starts growing in these countries, it's going to become similar to what Canada is, maybe a little better in certain areas as it continues to get going. I know there's a lot of sellers in Australia that are really excited that Amazon's coming over there.
Yeah, note that
That's gonna be a big thing.
there's a lot of incumbents already in both Australia and Canada, or Australia and Brazil, unlike Canada. Where I know that eBay is very popular in Australia. There's a couple of foreign marketplaces that are really popular in Brazil. So Amazon's coming in and trying to take over market share. So it might be a little bit more time before you see dominance, unlike Canada, where Amazon is pretty much the standard for online commerce.
Yeah. All right, really quick, outside e-com trends. I love to give the perspective. Everyone thinks so much about Amazon. Just know that e-com is a growth sector. That's why it gets so much attention. E-com's around 400 billion a year in the U.S. and retail is 4.8 trillion. So remember, e-com's roughly 8.3% of all of retail. So moving forward, I mean, Amazon just purchased Whole Foods. Let's not forget that retail is not really going to go away or die. It's there, and it's going to be there to stay. It's seeing a contraction because of some bloat in certain areas, from what I've read, and it's going to continue to contract this year. I think there'll be more bankruptcies, but e-com is not going to take over and become 90% of everything that's going on. So remember the context there. And then social, quickly on social media, for those who use social media as an advertising platform into Amazon, which can be very, very effective. We do it with some of our clients, and it can be great to send traffic both to your website or to Amazon. We just want to highlight the top social media platforms. Facebook, 2 billion users. They just hit that last year. Then YouTube, Instagram, then Twitter, Reddit, many people ignore, and then Pinterest is kind of growing. So kind of the bigger social media platforms there. And then Walmart, it's not going anywhere. Walmart online is improving. It's still a small portion of sales for majority of people we talk with, but they have a lot of cash, and they're going to keep growing. And on the second point, it's really interesting to note that if you look at the entire history of Amazon, their profits every single year, add them all up, that still does not equal to 1/4 of what Walmart's profits are at any given quarter. So just given perspective. And that's blazing through the last couple slides.
Yep. Couple of questions that I want to address. Somebody asked, outside of Amazon US, what is the next biggest Amazon market? EU. So EU is made up of 5 marketplaces, heavily based towards the UK and Germany make up the majority of the sales there. Another person asked, any tips for voice searches? So this is an interesting question as we see virtual assistants come in, and I don't know what they're going to do. They're really interesting. I have several of them. Actually, I have a Google Home right behind me. You guys can't see it. But it's possible that, voice searches become the norm in the next few years. We don't have any tips right now, but my first gut instinct would be, just take whatever you're doing as far as research on normal textual searches, and then, follow the same mantra for voice.
Yeah, essentially, we don't want to, there's so much new experimentation going on of trying to nail down specific points here, is that we don't want to give kind of false information, but we're doing some experimentation, and voice is definitely something that's there. So
yeah.
We don't want to ignore it.
And I'd like to add a few questions that came through in advance of the webinar. Some of you sent in your questions when you signed up. So what is the number one mistake that most merchants make? Like, what is the number one most important thing for merchants to do? So I'm sure you guys can tackle that one.
So I would, maybe we have different answers, but from what I've seen very large businesses that don't know what their net income is after selling through e-com. And the reason is e-com, and I don't blame the businesses for it actually. The e-com is really complicated. It can be a lot more complicated than traditional selling channels because there's a lot of different inputs and a lot of different fees and things that get pulled out here and there and all over the place. And so one of the biggest mistakes I see is people not tracking their numbers. And now this is coming from a numbers person and a numbers company. That we love numbers, and that's what we use for everything we do. But we see people lose money on ads, FBA, long-term storage, lots of things because they're not tracking the details and the numbers of what's going on. So that's analytics, and that's why we built kind of our analytics system that we use internally to help companies understand where their net income is, and then how to grow that, because it's a big hole. We've seen $1 million sellers say, I don't know what my net income is every month. Embarrassingly, is how they put it. So
I would probably say something along the lines of, one is people, they don't have a plan. They go in and say, Amazon's where I want to be, and sort of don't have a plan on what they're going to try to do, and how many products they're going to launch, and how they're going to launch things. And then building upon that is, I think people really underestimate the need for marketing in general. I think several years ago, it was safe to say you can put something up on Amazon, just anything, and it had the potential to be a #1 product in a category. As more and more people get onto Amazon, there's more and more competition. So that's less likely to happen, that you're going to just have, just some A-list product just blow up out of nowhere. So people really underestimate, if you want to get to $1 million in sales, you're going to need to spend some money to get there as far as marketing is concerned. Traditionally, companies spend anywhere between 5 and 25% of top line revenue in marketing. So just keep that number in mind.
And is that something that Product Labs can help with?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Because we've had quite a few questions about that. So
yeah, we help our clients put together plans on budgeting. You know, like what we've seen as far as the life cycle of a product. If it's a newer product, you can expect to spend more money on marketing because the world doesn't know about it. You need to get that machine turning, those wheels turning. If it's a mature product, you probably are going to spend less. But we always build in marketing and then what we can expect to see as far as an ROI on those dollars.
Yeah, we build out plans for all of our clients and include marketing, and sometimes we go beyond Amazon too, of start branching into the social media and managing that for them, and where the marketing's coming in there and tracking all the numbers and clicks into dollars and sales for our clients.
Great. So on that note, actually, I want to give people another opportunity to get some more information about Product Labs and about Feedvisor. So I'll give you guys the opportunity now. So if you would like some more information about Feedvisor, we offer algorithmic repricing. We can help you optimize your profit margins once you have everything in place. Then please click on Feedvisor. Product Labs can help you plan. They are from Amazon, as you can tell, Tim and Brad. They can help you with your plans, help you figure out your numbers and your goals, and then help you find the right software solutions to help you grow and get those sales going. And then you can work together with Feedvisor to optimize your profit once that's done. So I suggest perhaps that you click on the last button to request the information from both Feedvisor and Product Labs, and then we'll be in touch with you with more info. Now, we do have time for one last question. So Tim, unless you've seen one that's come up that you're eager to answer, I can answer one of the ones that we got in advance.
Let's go with your question, but there was a really funny one. I don't know if you saw it. That somebody said, "Why aren't you letting Gabby talk?"
I know. I have to explain that.
Right. No, Gabby is the moderator. We're not trying to stop her from talking, but I thought it was funny to bring that one up.
I prefer if she was talking.
I cannot compete with a former Amazonian. What I can say is here at Feedvisor, some of our customer success managers are former Amazonians too, and many of the other ones have worked with thousands of sellers. So Feedvisor's customer success team are very, very full of expertise, and they have presented many of our webinars. I actually work in the marketing team, which is why I'm hosting this webinar and not presenting this webinar. So that's why I didn't speak much. I left it to the experts. But I will ask one more question before we go, because I see many of you are still on the line. So maybe you can give us like a very short step-by-step and the best way to launch a new product, because I know there have been lots of changes in the last year with the way that you can get reviews, the advertising, sponsored products. So maybe you can give like a very quick 3-minute intro as to the best way to launch a new product on Amazon.
That's tough to do in 3 minutes,
if it's possible.
I'm gonna try.
Yeah, let me. So there's a lot of caveats in all of this. You have to know when you're launching a new product, people don't know about your product, and they probably don't. And that's what you need to do. You need to let people know about your product. It used to be on Amazon, there were lots of gaps in the marketplace, and I've said this before. There were lots of holes when I was looking at the catalog when I was inside of Amazon. A lot of those have been filled now, so you can't just take a product, put it in there, and expect traffic to come, which you used to be able to do. Now you need to let people know that you exist and that your product exists. So all of our strategies revolve around letting people know. We actually have, if a company has a social media presence, we want to couple in a new launch with what's going on with their social media and announce it to people. There's also a marketing push that you want to be doing. So we do an analysis on the products and how expensive marketing is going to be for the first several months, because you're needing to gain rank and gain position inside Amazon. organically, and you do that. Well, one of the most simple ways of doing that is through your ads and your paid ads. So to launch a new product, we would set it up. We'd push out and get to our community, if they have a community, or to people that you know, and let everyone know that your product's there. Ask for people to buy your product and give reviews to your product, and then do a lot of marketing around your product, and have a specific number of where you want to hit with your marketing and how much you want to spend and how much you're willing to put into the initial investment to kind of grow your product in the rankings and the sales where it is inside Amazon. So there's lots of caveats and a lot of different situations, but that's a fairly general one.
Cool. Anything to add, Tim?
Yeah, just pay attention to quality content is really what you want. You know, I think a lot of people, they go in and they spend a lot of money maybe sourcing a product, and then they put just terrible content up on the product detail pages. And you got to understand, there is no store shelf for people to go and look at your product. You know, the detail page is your store shelf. So make sure you got those great images, make sure you have the great copy on there, and follow the tips and tricks that Brad talked about, and you'll be on your way. But just know that it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. It is going to take a little while to build up that presence.
Thanks very much, guys. On that note, we do have to say goodbye, but thank you very, very much for all your expertise. I know that there are many questions that have been unanswered, and what I suggest is that you email services@productlabs.net if you'd like to ask them personally, or you can email me, gabby@feedvisor.com. Shoot over any questions you have, and you will receive the recording in your inbox within the next couple of days. So you will be able to watch this again. Thank you very much, Tim, and thank you very much, Brad. We're so happy that we had you on our latest episode of Ask the Amazon Experts. And guys, the audience, you've been fantastic. I'm pleased you're all thinking of me and you'd like me to speak more. So I will see you on the next episode of Ask the Amazon Experts. Have a great week.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Gabby.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.